All right, and I do have some amazing slides to go through, but essentially what this is going to be, Shaun and Sam, is it's supposed to be sort of like a virtual panel. You guys are the panelists, I'm the moderator. I want to just ask you guys a bunch of questions. The slides are there to kind of help us with the flow of the conversation. So I've got screen one here. We're going to start sharing there. You should see my covering slide, which is understanding second order revenue. You both see that?
Here we go.
Oh, yeah.
All right, here we go. All right. So, thanks for joining me. So I'm Ryan O'Connor. I'm the founder of Growthable. We're a customer success organization that helps high-level agencies achieve second order revenue through providing customer success services. I also have Sam Carlson, co-founder Uphex, with me. G'day, Sam. How you doing?
G'day.
G'day. Well done. You butchered it, but you got close.
I know I would.
Yeah. And I've also got Shaun Clark, co-founder, CEO, HighLevel. How you doing, Shaun?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
It's awesome. So this is it's a virtual fireside. All right. This is how I would what I envision as sort of being a virtual panel. This is our virtual stage. So you guys are the panelists. I'm going to moderate some questions. We're going to use some slides to help guide this conversation. But the topic of today is understanding second order revenue through customer success. So second order revenue, what is it? So in a subscription model company, right, I argue that the sort of classic sales funnels that vertical shape, like they're sort of top to bottom. We're typically looking at sales and marketing funnels as, there's a large percentage of leads or whatever going in, and then there's a small percentage going out. And that's kind of, where it begins and ends. But in subscription model companies, in, recurring subscription operating models, it more looks like a bow tie, right? And these kind of theories and models have been sort of developed over time. And this is not my theories. These are theories that I'm bringing to light. But, this is the bow tie model. And so everything that we see kind of beyond commit, right, is a function of customer success. We look at the onboarding process. We look at the adoption. In product companies, we're looking at the adoption of features. We're looking at the adoption of services, right? And my favorite kind of illustration here is this kind of, cyclical kind of infinite loopy looking thing between adoption and expansion. So, looking at this model, guys, and I think what I might do is I might go to Shaun first. Looking at this model, looking and thinking about your own customer success team and whether or not, I don't even know if you call it that inside of HighLevel. Might call it.
We have several.
You have several teams, right? So, but
yeah,
Shaun,
your company. We actually have them stationed. We have them stationed on the right-hand side here. So I'll walk you through our model. So we have, we don't have a sales team, but what we have is we have sort of like a pre-trial team where if you come to our website and you chat with us, there's a team that's there to try to help answer any kind of questions that you have. So that's sort of that. And then once you jump on for trial, we have a specific team that focuses on the trial to paid motion. And literally our goal there is to coax you into a Zoom call where what we're doing is trying to get you to value very quickly using a very standard methodology, because what we know is it doesn't matter if whatever it is that you want out of our system, we know that if we can get you through one piece of success very quickly, it will keep you in the journey for that next stage. So we have a team that does that. And basically their goal is to get you to go from trial to paid. And then if you go paid, we have the next team up, which we call the success team. And they sort of expand on this idea of, okay, cool. Is there something you wanted to do? If so, let's get that done for you. If not, we'll continue to move you down the path that we know you probably should go through. And then that's the first 90, that's sort of your first paid 90 days. And then after that, you roll out to the actual support team for sort of the ongoing journey. And then we also have a team that sort of layers in on top of that. And actually does that expand motion, gives you calls and says, hey, did you know about WordPress? Did you know about this? Did you know about that? And tries to create that knowledge of the product and hopefully create those upsell opportunities down the line.
Yeah. So, and like I'm personally, I'm a customer of HighLevel, and I would have experienced some of that myself. But what I'm just also interested in is just expanding that a little bit further, Shaun, in that, like, the classic kind of software play would be, I've got 3 plans, one's cheap, one's more expensive, and depending on which one the client's going with, we're going to throw more kind of post-sale delivery resources at the more expensive one. But I don't think you guys do that. I think everyone's the same. Is that?
Yeah. So, I mean, we know who's more or less likely to be successful with us. If you walk in the door, it has nothing to do with the plan, right? So the way our plans are structured, so we do this, we think we do this a little differently. Our plans are self-upgrading based on your success. So we're immediately aligned out of the gate, not to get you to buy something you don't need, but just to get you to more and more success. Because the more success we get you just naturally are going to go ahead and go up the plans anyway. So we don't think about any of that stuff. Now, we do know that if you walk in the door, there's a very big bifurcation, which is has customers, doesn't have customers. And in that motion, we decide, okay, listen, we know that if you have no customers, it doesn't matter how great you get the software set up, you have no money. So what we try to do there is we try to move you down the 5-day challenge to get your first customer, the SaaSpreneur course to help you get into the SaaS model, really trying to give you a business model as much as a software platform. So we've had this sort of bifurcation of channels. And then for people who do have customers, we're going to move you more down the, hey, let's get you set up on the software bit, because you already obviously have customers. And so, you don't necessarily need us to teach you how to make money. You need us to teach you how to take your existing customer base and the software and create value. So it is definitely a differential in focus, but no, we don't treat you differently. You still get the same resources and the same people and the same flow.
Yeah. With the trial, was there always a trial? It was always meant to be something that you could get your hands on, try, and then...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
100%.
And you talked about, and we're going to get there in my presentation, but we're talking about a couple of things. Emotional impact and rational impact is how I'm describing them later on. But you're talking about making that impact early on in your new clients, because that team's kind of specialized, and that first team gets them and they're trying to, what's the impact that you can make with someone in the first 4 days?
It's all perception. So the most important thing to realize is that we sort of come to the world and try to rationalize things, but human beings are incredibly emotional. And so for us, it's about creating a people-to-people connection. And I want people to leave those first calls knowing that we care more than anything else. So yeah, we have this thing that we try to get you to do, and we try to set you up and this and that. But more importantly, this is why we do this on Zoom. We want the most human-to-human connection we can possibly get, because we know that we can do great things for you, but we also know that you're taking a risk with us. And we want to show you, and we want to show up and show you that we care, that we're there for you, that we're going to hold your hand through the process. We're not just going to sell you something and abandon you. We're a different company. We actually do care about your success. So for us, it's about humanizing the experience as fast as possible. And that's kind of our main focus. Really throughout the journey, but certainly up front.
Yeah. Well, I can actually, from firsthand experience, I remember when I first signed up, I jumped into a Facebook community, and then I had an issue, and you ended up jumping on a Zoom with me and like going in the back end and fixing something for me.
Yeah, there you go.
On a Zoom. And
how long ago was that, Ryan?
I think it was like 2 years ago, something like that.
Well, my point was going to be, he still does stuff like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I talked to a guy yesterday. The nice thing is I've standardized it. We've standardized this because mostly just because I can't do it all, but it is about that same concept, which is how do we scale something like this, but get across what I always used to try to do, which is, I'll set you up, but hey, let's talk about your business. Let's understand what you're trying to achieve. Like, let's not just solve the problem, but let's also make sure you're leaving here with an eye towards success for yourself, because I know if you're successful, you'll upgrade plans and we'll do just fine. But can
I jump in here? Sorry, Shaun, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, go for it, man.
Shaun's laid out something that you can diagram, right? And that's really cool. But one of the things that he didn't talk about, and it's something that I saw immediately, and I'm like, I have to do that, was his level of participation in his own community. Yeah. You will see him at stupid hours of the morning responding to comments in the group. You will see him doing it not just once a month. You'll see him doing it every day. And to comments that sometimes are like, you wouldn't think that a CEO of a company that has 50,000 agencies that they would respond to. So and I've told Shaun this before, I'm like, you really kind of ticked me off, because now instead of me being able to have the lap of luxury as a quote CEO, it's not, it's the person to person CEO. It's the, hey, I'm actually, and you have heard I haven't heard anyone say this. Sorry, I'm stuttering here. He's one of the most approachable CEOs there is. Right. And so if we're talking about first order consequences, second order consequences, adoption, expansion, all of those things, there also has to be a culture. Okay. It can't just be here's the pie chart. Here's the frame, like the wireframe to follow. It's got to be lead by example. And that means I'm willing to get in my own stupid Facebook group and answer a question that has been answered 15,000 times. Right. Which I emulate as well. So they did that at HighLevel. It resonates with people. There's a tighter community because of it. We also keep out a bunch of the people talk about how, sorry if I start talking too much, but people talk about how communities, how Facebook groups specifically tend to devolve over time. And I think at some point, at some scale, that's going to happen. Like, you can't keep the quote quality in the conversations at a perfect position always. But for me, when people come into my community and they post one of those, hey, make $100,000 in 3 weeks, I'm taking 20 people to do this, or hey, I'm a Google this, that, and the other, like all these posts, it's an immediate bam, right? And I'm really, really hawkish on that. But because I'm there participating, just like Shaun is there participating, you see the quality of conversations, because they know, I don't know this, I think they know that we're watching. Hey, we're paying attention to the group of people, and we will not allow it to devolve into a cesspool of business ops. We're trying to create entrepreneurs here, and even if people come into our communities, I'll speak collectively, I think Shaun would agree with this. Even if they come into our communities with hey, this is what we got sold, but this is what we need, we don't care. We're going to teach them, and they can leave if they don't like the fruit, what is it? Your meat and potatoes. If they don't like that, then they don't have to do this. So, anyway,
that's cool. I like that I also try to be very involved in my own company, and Shaun was at least some inspiration behind it, right? Was
big example for sure. Well,
it's okay if I didn't inspire anybody. I'm not out to be inspirational. I'm just making it as I go along.
No, but everybody always wants everything to be paint by numbers, right? You always want it to be easier and this, that, and the other. Yeah. Well, but you have to like apply skill to it, and then it is easier. You've heard that arrow, like, what is it? Pioneers get arrows in their back. Alex Hormozy said it takes a lot of time to do big shit. The chasing phrase should say it takes a lot of time to do big shit for the first person. Everybody that follows after can do it in a fraction of the time. And there are cheat codes. But the one thing that will never change is the first order consequences, knowledge, skills. Are you trying to get them? Are you trying to get better? Are you trying to actually learn who your customer is? Are you doing these principled things that will pay second order consequences in the long run, so you can keep people? So that's the subjective thing that nobody talks about. The objective, sure, let's get people to adopt it. And Shaun's right. When we were with Uphex, the first thing that we knew we needed to do is if they could launch an ad during their onboarding session, their retention skyrocketed. That's a thing that you can write down on a piece of paper and everybody can work towards. But if you're not living that in your culture, and you actually don't, instead of just adopting hey, we're going to do this thing, we're going to do this thing because it helps people. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I think that's the culture part of it.
It's a good segue what you're talking about here, Sam. So just a flick forward to a slightly different items here on my slides, but it's basically just talking about customer centricity, right? I know HighLevel's customer centric, we all know that, right? And I guess whether it was deliberate in the way that Shaun and you built that operating model, or if it kind of evolved organically, doesn't matter about that. But I guess I know without even asking Shaun, like, do you have all these things embedded into the culture of, the operating model? Yes. And so Sam,
I'm gonna get, I guess is probably the way I'd put it. I mean, we don't, we think a lot about what we're personally, and I think of me and my co-founders primarily, like, what are we doing? And then what do those choices say to our people? Because at our size, it's incredibly impossible, I would say, to somehow write these things down and send them out on, you could do all that nonsense, but I think good leadership comes from the top. People really truly look up to see what to do and follow along with the drumbeat. So if anything, I would say, I looked at my direct reports and try to make sure they're not screwing things up from a culture perspective and a decision-making perspective. And that's how I think I serve to sort of push those things through the culture better than anything else I could do.
Yeah. Well, so okay, so on this slide that I'm looking at, right, talking about these the elements that kind of make up customer centricity. Sam, I was talking to you earlier before we sort of jumped into the slide deck, but you were talking about pushing back in your own mind about whether or not you'd build educational resources. So if we just list these off here, because everyone can read, so I don't need to read them off, but looking at I always like to think of this, it's funny, I juxtapose this type of thing in the sales team. That the modern sales team is it's chopped up, it's specialized. You have someone sets the appointment, someone does the demo, someone closes the deal, blah, blah, blah. Maybe not so much in B2C, but certainly in B2B. And there's not a lot of value that's being brought to the buyer in the first 3 interactions. They're being qualified in this 15-minute conversation. Who cares? Do you have budget? Are you immediately going to buy this in the next 3 months? Blah, 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 blah. What value does that provide me as the buyer? None, right? I'm just being qualified into a bucket to be forecast out to someone else. But when you think about it in the model of customer success, and you build a customer success team that's specialized and doing things in different areas, you need to create value in every interaction, right? Otherwise, there's no point doing it, right? So if you have that team that takes you through the trial, you're trying to create value in that. You're not just asking them a bunch of questions to figure out if they're going to be suitable to go beyond a trial or not. And then we talk about, understanding the customer, helping educate them and stay focused on the outcomes that they intended to achieve. And then the 2 most important ones on this slide is helping them achieve impact. And it's, I suppose, in the model that I've got here today, it's basically continuous impact. You're always trying to drive impact. And then we break it up into 2 sections, rational and emotional. And rational impacts essentially the business, their business is being impacted by the outcomes you're providing to them. And then the emotional stuff is, it's pretty straightforward. It was that they recognized in themselves that they wanted to get past a particular thing. They wanted to move the needle in some way that affects them as an individual, and you've helped them do that. So, right. So having said all that, Sam, again, we talked about you didn't want to build educational resources. Talk us through what it looks like today, but the hesitation, then why you made the decision to build educational resources, what the impact it's made for you as an organization, I guess, but then also for the clients that you have in their adoption and the churn rates and all those metrics that we like.
Yeah. I was telling you that initially when I started Uphex, I was like, I'm not creating a Facebook ads course. I'm not going to create a Facebook ads course. There's tons of them out there. Courses in general kind of have become so, prolific. Everybody's got a course. So I almost feel like saying, I have a course is going to somehow just downgrade what I was doing. So I was focusing a lot on the community. At some point in time, our growth kind of started coming and really was going very good. And we've got 3 price tiers as well. And just like Shaun, you know, we price according to their growth level. So as they grow, we grow in revenue, we grow with them. And so our middle and our top tier, our churn were really good. Obviously, like if people got customers, they're going to stay, right? But the lower tier, that initial tier was a high churn thing. I mean, software companies in this particular audience have churn issues. And we were thinking, what can we do to solve this? So we came back to the whole, all right, I guess I got to create a stupid course, which isn't a Facebook course. It's more of a, if you're doing the HighLevel plus Uphex model, this is the agency model course. It does teach Facebook, but it also teaches HighLevel. But what I did when I did that, because the reason I didn't want to do a course was because I'm like, I know I'm going to make this and nobody's going to take it. Like, that is incredibly frustrating. And how, you know, first order consequences, where can I spend my time that's going to give me the best bang for my buck down the line? So I came up with a strategy and I said, all right, I'm going to put this course together, but then I'm going to put a module in there. And the module is going to be my carrot. And it's, you know, getting clients, right? And it's all this stuff. And I put what the modules were. I said, coming soon. And I talked about it. We did kind of like a mini launch. And then for about 2 months, I talked about what was coming. Well, as soon as I dangled that carrot, people started using it more. And because they started using it more, I noticed something really strange in my ascension numbers. We started to, in terms of percentage, add less trial users, okay, because we were focusing more time on the course and the content and the education. But our revenue was increasing every month. And people were ascending at a higher per capita rate. And so to me, I'm like, oh, I didn't see it for a couple months, but now they're really starting to, and right now it's really kicking into another gear. We look at our reports, you know, daily, and it's really kicking.
How do you get them to take the course?
So it is,
like you said, your biggest fear was you're going to do all this and no one's going to bother to take it. So how do you fix that?
So top of funnel, every link of every YouTube video I do, it's kind of like a little commercial kind of thing on commercials. Like, say, by the way, if you haven't learned this, go to Lead Gen U. We have a lot of top of funnel things. But then again, in the course, when they go to the course, they're going to peruse through the modules and they're going to be like, oh, they're going to skip through. I don't want to learn that stuff. That's effort. But then they're going to go to the get clients. And then they're going to click on the links on the get clients. And now I've got a pitch deck in there. Shaun, you might like this. I got a pitch deck in there that people can model, and it will take people who can't sell and turn them into a closer just by changing the pitch deck. It's a lot better than a sales quote script, because a sales script requires all of this. It's like a professional bowler. He can throw the ball and get a strike. A pitch deck is like a bowling alley with bumper lanes. There's a visual reminder of where you're at in your pitch. There's cues onto whether or not you're hitting the value. So all of these things make it so even the person who has no clients, which that's the whole thing with your customer success thing. It's like, well, we got to get these people some way to get their first couple clients. That to me is mine. Yeah. So I dangle that carrot and they go through it.
Yeah. And I think, like, do you think that I don't know what Shaun's opinion on this is. I mean, I think I have the answer, but like, both of you, do you deliberately include content that only relates to higher packages in your educational content so that it is kind of, people are seeing what they can't yet have and they need to go through their upgrade growth paths to obtain it? Or is it more subtle for you, Shaun, or is it more deliberate for you, Sam? I don't know.
I'll let Shaun go first.
I was going to say, we're not very good at this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, we're still, I mean, you know, it's, you know, you can take the boy out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the boy. So at some point, you know, you just are who you are. And so for us, we're product people. And so we're really good at punching out features. And I think we really rely, but I think there's to some extent, though, this is a really positive thing. I mean, we know what we're not good at. And so we don't, you know, we definitely, we have, like, you know, we have a course, like the SaaSpreneur course, and I think it's great. We spend a lot of time on it and this and that. But at the end of the day, like if I really think about how we excel, it's about realizing like we aren't ever going to be great course creators. So it's almost better to just push other people to create courses for us and give them a way to be successful doing it. Because, you know, we don't just think of ourselves as serving agencies in terms of the white label and all that. We also are doing this everywhere now. You know, we just recently opened it up so anybody can bid on our ad terms. We don't even care. You can bid right on my, you know, if you want to bid on gohighlevel.com, you do it. Because what we realized is that, you know, we're really terrible at ads, and we always will be, and that's great. I plan to never be good at Google Ads, because I think there's a lot of other people out there in the world that can be good at Google Ads. And if we can incentivize them to go out and be their best at Google Ads, well then hallelujah, please do. And the same thing goes for courses. And actually we're opening this up to content. We have this new thing called the Content Army we're testing out, where we're going to just go to people and say, listen, we'll pay you X dollars per video or whatever it is to just go make a video about this topic. Here's the help article about it. Go put your own spin on it. Thanks. And then we'll pick a winner and we'll pay them even more to license the content. Whoever actually does a good job, stuff like that. Because again, we're not going to be good at all that stuff, and we'd rather just incentivize other people to do it for us.
Yeah, that's cool. Oh, by the way, as soon as I saw that policy change,
are you running ads? Oh, look at that. See?
Well, you'd be.
Well,
you know,
would that be a second order consequence?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I don't want to get off track. But Sam, what about you? Like, so educational wise, are you deliberately designing?
I think it's funny. I completely agree with Shaun.
Yeah, right.
I'm not that cunning. I wish I was smarter. I wish I could see around different corners and things like that. But I own an agency still to this day. Yeah. And I literally sat down and I was like, okay, if I was on day one of my agency doing this model, what would I need to know? Literally the first video in Lead Gen U is, what is an agency and what does this model do? And why do local businesses want it? Like, I start at ground zero. There's no, I didn't have any, like, I don't have any hidden ninjas in the corner that are ultimately going to find me some magic affiliate feature or whatever. And even my links to, so I have HighLevel affiliate links and Growthable affiliate links, and I have links in the description, but I just say what they are. I'm like, if you want HighLevel, go here. Yeah. If you want these services, go here. Right. And so it's just like, these are what I use in my agency. This is what I think can help you. And so it wasn't that cunning at all. You know, I just, not very strategic, just like, hey, fortunately, I walked down the exact same path that you've already done. So I blaze the trail. It's over there. Follow.
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, I mean, and I think that, well, a more cunning success team would deliberately build in, you know, one, you both have packages that are, I suppose, relative to their own success, right? And so, you know, if I'm doing well, I want to be on the better package, blah, blah, blah. But what I find, and certainly I know more about HighLevel, apologies, Sam, than I do about Uphex at this point, right? But what I find is that there are things that I want to enable me to be more successful in the higher plans. And so it's a double, it's like a multiple effect that it has on me, you know. And then I have that kind of the community impact of, you'll go and see kind of like people in the community that are successful, and they're like, you know, we're on this, right? We're on the top package, right? And so, you know, then it's like a 3x kind of force multiplier where I'm like, all right, well, in order to succeed, I need to, you know, grow. And when I grow, I need to go on the higher package. And it's kind of, everything's pushing me in that direction. It, for me, is sort of like a customer success guy. Like, it feels deliberate, but, you know, as you guys are saying, like, it was never kind of like planned, right? So that's both very interesting to hear your answers there.
Can I just chime in here for just a second?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So two thoughts to ping off Shaun here. So last year at Level Up, which if you guys aren't going to Level Up, go there. Me and Shaun are going to be there. Ryan's going to be there. Go. But from stage, Shaun was talking about their vision and what they're doing, right? And people talk about words like vision, right? And they become cliche, and they almost kind of like, I feel like they do this, you know, they go in one ear out the other because we say these things so much. But he was talking about, and obviously it spoke to me for a very specific reason. He was talking about how Salesforce had publicly traded billion-dollar companies built on top of their platform.
Right.
And that was his vision. And I'm like, if that's your vision, I want in. Right. Like, for real. Like, I remember sitting there, and it wasn't, I saw him at the conference, and I said, hey, you know, we got to know each other. And the next thing that he said to me, we did an interview, and he goes, we don't want you to keep people for 3 or 4 months. We want you to keep them for 3 or 4 years. And my takeaway from both of these examples are, you need a much broader vision of where to go, of where you're going to go. Okay. Because if you start thinking, how can I keep my customers for 3 or 4 years? Solutions, strategy, culture, all of those things will automatically start falling into place. Right. And you'll start figuring a lot. I think a lot of times it's not that we don't have answers to these questions. It's that we're asking the questions either standing in the wrong place or in the wrong mindset. You know what I mean? And so again, you know, as soon as Shaun started, you know, he was saying that, then I'm like, I still have an agency. I'm like, well, what could I do in my agency? I can acquire customers. The offer, the Uphex GHL offer is such a sizzle, especially when they already have an agency that they're paying $1,500, $200 to, or $2,000 to. It's slam dunk. But it doesn't mean that just because they were excited when they bought, that means they're going to stay forever. So then it's like, okay, well, what could I do to make them stay for 3 or 4 years? All of these things that we're talking about, you know, leading groups, like training, all that is great. But I started thinking, like, if I could make the services I have a self-liquidating offer after month 3 and acquire their boring software, AKA their website, AKA whatever boring, whatever toolkit I want to throw into the back end, say, hey, by the way, right now you're paying X amount of dollars for review automation and a website. We're going to take that over and we're going to give you this for free. Right. But my terms are, I lock you into annual contracts because that fits that particular model. You make a lot more money, not by acquiring customers, but by keeping them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so if I just think real long-term, acquisition is where everybody starts. And it's like, okay, well, if I get these skills, I can do this. That's where everybody starts. But I would tell you the way to make money in this business is by keeping them. Right. And that requires all the things that we're talking about today. Anyway, so I just thought, I thought it was an important sidestep because of the interactions I've had with Shaun, made me personally think bigger and think, oh, hey, if that, then what? Right? What can I do to make that happen?
Yeah. It's interesting. I'd love to know. So this is coming into the kind of the data aspect of this, right? So for me in my models and what I think are good and best practices for customer success teams is the ability, you know, to provide, you know, like if I was running your customer success team, Sam, or your customer success team, Shaun, like I think I would be like, I'd take it upon myself to be like, here's all this information, here's all these metrics, right? Do something in response. You know, apathy, do nothing is also something, but do something in response to these metrics, right? So, you know, we don't need to talk about any of these here. These are suggestions, right? But Sam, talk about like everyone, especially in the communities that I think that, well, we're a part of a lot of these. There's a lot of focus on client acquisition. There's not a lot of focus on like, how do you grow someone from your base plan to your top tier plan, right? And that's arguably more important than getting them in the first place because it's keeping them, growing them over time. How do you do that? But metrics wise, right? Feeding that information back into sales because there's a feedback loop. This is what the customers are saying. This is the features that they're using, all that type of stuff. I'll get you both to answer this independently because it's going to be wildly different, right? But Shaun, like, so thinking about data, do you go into like sessions and like look at product usage? Did people leave you and go over to a competitor? The average kind of churn rate in terms of days, the average contract value, like is the average contract value $300? Is it $100? Like, what does all that information kind of tell you, and how does it impact what you do with customers over time to keep them longer, I guess? And I guess,
yeah, sure.
Do you care about lifetime value and increasing that lifetime value as much as the next guy, or is it not? Because I remember one time I was like, I assumed that a lot of people were on 97, but you said that actually most people are on 297. I don't know if that's still true.
Yeah, it is true. Okay, so here's what I would say. We have all of this at a level that most people could only dream of.
Right, yeah.
And I think it's all a big fat waste of time.
Right. Thanks for that.
He's right.
And in fact, if anything, I'll probably over time reduce the amount of data that we have, reduce this department, and invest my money elsewhere. Because here's what I'll tell you. 99% of it is backwards looking. So they're going to, the data team is going to, the best data teams in the world, some of them can tell you things soon enough that you can take action, but most of them are going to tell you things that happened at best a month ago. So they're basically writing a history book, and you're like, well, that sucks. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't places where they can come in and create immense amounts of value, but they have to be very strategically operated. But and I can get into that. But in this particular instance, if you think about it, here's what matters. Does the customer find value in the product? If they do, they will stay. And sure, you want them to upgrade and this and that. You can think through all of that. But the reality is this is all just like a smoke screen of information that is, I think, way less relevant. I would almost say this is not even relevant to anyone, because most people just do not need to go beyond, hey, I have this thing, this product that's supposed to get this customer to this point of value. Is that value first and foremost enough that if they got there, they would stick? And if so, how am I getting them there? And can I do a better job of that? And sure, that manifest itself into things like churn rates and so forth and so on? Absolutely. You should definitely know. And if I was going to pick some key metrics here, churn rate is very important, because churn is a sophisticated way of saying, someone says, you suck, I hate this product, I'm gone. That's all it really is. Hate to break it to everybody. Sounds cool, but that's what it is. And all the money is made in the recurring revenue, all of it. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, you should look at your LTV to CAC ratio for sure, especially if you're like putting out large dollars. You need to know things like payback period. But there are a lot of things like, I think there's some basics that sort of take care of a lot of this stuff by themselves. So like, I would focus on higher ARPU, and that's a fancy word for how much someone pays you every month, average revenue per user. Because at the end of the day, if you have a sufficiently large average, it will cover a lot of sins up. A lot of these models when they're built, I mean, so first of all, let's keep in mind most software companies are unprofitable. So their metrics look like garbage, and yet many of them are publicly traded to this day. So apparently none of this matters for them either. But if you're really trying to build a real company, I think some of the bigger mistakes are charge more than you think you should, because if you aren't, that's the first thing that's going to get you in trouble. There was a great talk, I think, once by the guy who started, oh gosh, what's that big WordPress hosting company? Whatever that is, the biggest one. And
WP Engine, maybe.
Yeah, WP Engine. And he said something really profound that stuck with me. He said, no matter what product you create, let's just assume for a second you can beg, borrow, and steal, cold call, cold email, DM, whatever yourself to 1,000 customers. Build a business at 1,000 customers. You're going to be if that's all you can ever get to, you'll be insanely happy with that. And I thought, that makes a lot of sense to me because I could see it. I could just go around the internet DMing people, and eventually, maybe it takes me 5 years, it takes 100,000 people, but I can get 1,000 out of that. So I better be really pumped with the business that I have, and the average revenue right there is everything to that equation. If you're charging $30 times 1,000 people, that's actually a pretty crappy business. But if you're charging $300, that can start to be different, right? So for me, it's really just about things like, how much are you charging on average? Do people like your product? Are you getting them to adopt it? And are they sticking around? That's it. All this other stuff is really a reflection on that idea. And while it's interesting, for me, all of these revenue metrics will look beautiful if you just focus on those basics. And all this, and a lot of these things are derivatives from private equity and venture capital. The rule of 40 nonsense, like that's just a PE. That is literally used by PE firms and VC firms to figure out the type of valuation they're going to give you. In my opinion, has very little to do with anything operationally useful on a day-to-day basis.
That's fascinating. I want to unpack a bit of that, but Sam, I want to give you the opportunity to just jump in and give us your take as well.
I don't have a different response. The only other thing I would add on to what Shaun is saying is, what is it? Success leaves a trail or something like that. I can't remember, you guys. But at the end of the day, if your customers aren't getting, like, if you're not producing case studies, then your thing sucks, right? And if we're talking about like basic things. If you can't sell your thing, then you don't have a unique value proposition. You don't have a unique product. If you're copying somebody else, then you don't have a reason why you created it. So these are all, this is all like the color in a story that actually makes it come to life. But what makes it stay and what makes it really produce is, can you produce success stories? And for me, you want to, hey, is anybody winning with Uphex? You don't want to ask that. You want people to like volunteer it. And then you say, awesome, can we share? Awesome, can we share? And then over time, when people are sharing their success, that credibility and proof is really what pairs up with your promise and makes it work. Because I can buy impressions right now from Twitter and from TikTok, and they're incredibly cheap. But without the substance down, and I wouldn't not even say that's top of the funnel. That's like the sky above the top of the funnel, those types of clicks. But still, if eventually they get to the top of my funnel and they're the right person, when they come down, they're expecting to see credibility, believability. And today, in a world where everybody is like, overnight, I hate the word guru, but I don't have can we get a replacement word for that, please? A self-proclaimed professional at this, that, the other. Nobody has to earn their stripes. People are now looking deeper. They're looking into, are people winning with this? And if you can't show that, it doesn't matter. It's a matter of time, right? You're on borrowed time.
It's funny, like, I feel like Shaun's answer kind of, maybe I was part of expecting it, because I feel like it's kind of the anti, VC backed, type sort of, establishment. But I spent a long time listening to podcasts with guys like Reid Hoffman and all these types of guys. The interviews, all of those kind of guys, right? And they're all talking about kind of like, you have to have fires burning when you go home. You have to, have pissed off customers that are unhappy, and you have to let go, right? And it's not necessarily directly related to some of these metrics that we're looking at here, right? The metrics for me are just trying to look at like holes in a bucket, and if you can patch them because it's onboarding, or because it's customer success, because it's support, how do you go about putting patches in those places? But like, Sam, do you go home knowing that you've got like a bunch of people that are really annoyed, or and kind of go, what, I can't please everyone? Or do you deliberately take a thing where you're like, no, this has to be fixed. Everyone needs to be 100% happy, excited, or whatever. Or, I think the modern now approach is like you get to kind of pick your customers more than just as much as customers pick you, right? Where it's like, you both mutually want to be a match for each other. I hope the question makes sense, right? But
yeah, well, I could just say I don't give a crap gene. I couldn't care less if somebody likes me. I don't care. I really do not care. I don't think about anybody who doesn't like me. The second I leave my battle station here, I go into my house and I'm with my family. I couldn't care less. I don't take that home. What I do care about is, there's this phrase, you never hear about all of the planes that landed, right? And it's the idea that a lot of times the most vocal people are the turds anyway. It's the situations where, hey, one out of fill in the blank, 1 out of 1,000, 1 out of 100 are having a bad experience. Is that my fault? Probably not. If I can show to the now, if all I have is putting out fires, that might be a symptom of I have a problem with my product. But if I have people winning, and I have people like reaching out saying thank you, Shaun gets this, thank you for HighLevel. Like, if that's happening, who cares about the people who are going to be victims? Because there's always going to be those people, right? I don't think about it one iota, not even a little bit, unless it's constructive. If it's constructive, like, hey, I wish you fill in the blank, then I'll be like, they're right. It won't bother me, but I'll just be like, hey, we need to communicate with our users that that person is right. We're going to fix it. So
it's funny. I recently had a 1-star review left, but then every other review on my review page is 5. And I thought, well, that just looks like you're the problem, not me. Anyway.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sean, what do you think about that? Like in terms of like customers?
I am 100% the absolute opposite.
Oh, okay. Here we go. He's always contrarian. Yeah.
I am haunted by the slightest negative feedback.
Right.
And it will absolutely ruin my entire day.
Right.
And I cannot escape it. I can run, I can hide, but I cannot escape it under any condition. So
really,
I am an absolute slave to
with
feedback and angry people. Even when I know they're wrong, even when I know they're just full of it, it's incredibly difficult for me to shake it.
Can I just say that I love that you would say that, only because I think a person that in a position like CEO, you'd be tempted to say, oh no, it really doesn't bother me. That's my personality type. But I love, Shaun, that it bothers you. I mean, I think,
this is
person.
how I'm built. I mean, I don't, trust me. I don't welcome it. I don't think it's a great thing. I would much rather be who you are. But it's not how I'm built. So I can't change today, and I won't change tomorrow. Do
you have like an unpacking mechanism? So like you're married and you have, you have a couple kids. I can't remember.
Just one. No,
one.
Just one.
Just
all I can take.
Just one. Oh, okay.
Do you have like an
fun.
unpacking thing? Like, so you can go home and just say, all right, I need to draw
I never
a
go
line.
home. I am home. I'm always home. I mean. So that never changes. But no, I mean, I have an incredibly short memory, so it just sort of fades in the distance. So I just have to give it time.
Got it.
It'll eventually fade away. I suppose I'm unlucky in that it hits me so hard, but I'm also lucky in that I don't remember it for days and days, just a day generally. I generally wake up the next morning and I've just forgotten it. It's not that it's not there. It's just I can't remember it. But no, I just like I cannot. And so, but it also drives me. So I mean, it haunts me, but it's also the motor in which I run. So
I have firsthand experience of this, Sam. This happened this week. I had an employee leave and they got annoyed because they were asked to leave. And so they logged in to our because we use HighLevel for our calendar system to book all the onboarding meetings we do for all of our agency customers worldwide. They got angry. They logged in. They just started deleting calendars, right? And like, so a lot of HighLevel agencies were like, what is going on, right?
Oh, man.
I sent And I was like, what do I do? Right. So like, anyway, we deleted the user and try to like, figure out how to deal with it. I sent Shaun a message just because, I mean, I'm probably one of a billion people that he has on Facebook. Right. And this is why this is such a cool story. Right. I sent him a message and I'm in Australia. So who knows what time it was for him. And then I unsent it because his team already solved the problem, I don't know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes later. And I knew that he hadn't read it. So I like unsent it. And then, a couple of hours later, Shaun Clark pops up. Everything okay? Right. And I just thought, how cool is that? Right. Like, it's like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And there's like that fear.
What's funny is I had no this is how my memory works. So like I had no idea that was you.
Right. Right. There you go. Of course. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you could have been any random person and I would have done the same thing.
I know. I think, yeah, I know.
I think I did that this morning to somebody. I can't remember.
I know. I love it. It's completely democratic. And I'm sure that every time that me and Shaun get on a webinar, he's like, and Ryan is again. And you know what I mean? Like, it's just like the same.
Yeah, that's how my brain works. But that's okay. I mean, trust me, I don't even know. I can't even remember the name of my neighbors. I'll consistently call them names other than they are named. But the good news is that sort of thing doesn't actually bother me a bit. That doesn't, I don't mind calling people names that aren't their names. It doesn't, I don't know. I have no social issues there. But again, it's one of those things where I don't know. I'm driven to perfection to the extent that it's probably unhealthy, but it's just this idea that it is about finding the constructiveness in it. I certainly try to coach myself on that because we do want to do a great job for people. And I think when I see somebody like, upset, even if it's for like a crappy reason, I try to sort of think, well, wait a second, how do they get there? Because, and this goes back to the emotional component of how we do customer success. It's like, I find that when people are angry, they'll sort of verbalize it in some way that seems logical, but in reality, all they're really saying is, I'm angry, I'm hurt, and I don't feel cared for. And I tell this to my team all the time. I say, just call them up. Even if you can't solve the problem, just call them up. Because really what you're saying is like, hey man, I care. And expressing that, it just changes the world for people. And it was funny because I actually had this maybe this is what made my cruise so crappy, but I had this situation where my son was playing in a creek and my wife and I were probably 150 feet from him on a park bench. And all of a sudden we hear some guy go, hey, you little S word, get out of there. And it was an adult man attacking my son verbally for being in this creek. And it was the wildest thing because it's one of those moments in life where you're like, what in the world is going on? So of course, my wife is always up before me because my brain takes a little minute to like really rationalize what's really going on. But then we're both up there like, what the heck? And this guy's like, you shouldn't be in this creek and blah, blah, blah. And he's freaking out. And I was like, it's one of those things where you're trying to not get in a fight, but at the same time, you're really pissed off. And so you're like, like, just keep moving, guy. Like, just get the hell out of here kind of thing. But it was interesting. And my wife went up to the guy. So I was like, all right. And then in those situations, I was like, look, let's just pull away from the situation. Let's diffuse it. Why fight the fight? But my wife could not let it go. And so she literally hunted this guy down 5 minutes later when he was hanging out with his wife and she confronted him. But it was very interesting because, instead of being aggressive about it, her whole thing was like, how in the world should you, regardless of what my 10-year-old boy was doing, under what circumstance would you ever communicate to a 10-year-old like that?
Yeah.
I don't care what this kid's doing. I don't care if he's lighting something on fire. Like, if your mission is to somehow stop him from doing this, how would you ever think that that was an acceptable way to travel? Do you have kids? Do you have grandkids? And it was that type of connection that just broke this guy in half. And he just totally had to admit that he was a horrible person. And he was so embarrassed in front of his wife and everything else. And it was that emotional connection, because in the moment he was rationalizing, I don't know, whatever, like my son was going to hurt the stream or something. I don't even know. But it had you just sort of stayed there and really just been angry at him for being a jerk, you'd never have changed his perspective. But by simply saying, listen, I understand you're angry right now. I don't agree with it. but let's take it to a different level. You can really crack people, and you can move them emotionally to a place where you can create something constructive. And I was amazed that my wife could do this, because I certainly cannot. I would have just rather gotten in a fist fight with the guy. I would have lost and stuff. I'm not a fighter, but I still would have rather, that would have been my emotional instinct. But I think it really goes back to how we treat our customers, because even when they're angry, even when I know they're wrong, I know they're just trying to reach out and say, I need help in a totally wrong way, in a hurtful way often. But I feel like if I can see through that emotion, I can get to something more important and more useful holistically. So I think that's why I still am always driven this way, and I just can't turn it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a wild situation to have one of your kids attacked by a person. I got to tell you, it's
happened to me.
Crazy.
It's happened
situation.
to me.
See, there you go. I'm just like, I can't believe there are people in the world who do that. I mean, there are plenty of times where I look at people's kids and I'm like, oh my God, get your kid off the railing, the window, the this, the that. But then I would never, ever, I would say to a kid like, hey, please get down off of that. I would absolutely say that. But to curse at a kid, oh man, I wouldn't even curse at an adult. I just know that those are hurtful, inflammatory, and not likely to solve anything. But to think a stranger would do that, woo, buddy. Yeah. Thanks, but no thanks.
Crazy.
Well,
it's nice to hear that other people have that experience.
I know we might be running short on time, so that it actually is an interesting point, because what I think is it's a small part, but it's obviously a large part of what we do, which is like the providing support 24/7, and having the little widget in everybody's HighLevel instance is just, it's one thing of many things that we do. But to Shaun's point, right, we always tell our customers that it's more important for you to just have someone who's there willing to listen to them just rage on about whatever problem they have is, and then go, you know what, like, I might not have the answer right this second, right? And that's the consumer expectation now. Everything is instant, solve it for me, rah, rah, rah. But it'd be more important, thinking about customer success, right, to just have someone there, listen to them kind of like dump everything on you, and you go, great, I'm going to take that away. I am going to get it resolved. Again, whether you're right or wrong or whatever, it doesn't matter. But then it turns into something positive. So it goes from kind of detractor to advocate. And I love those people that you can shift from detractor to advocate through that process. And all you had to do was just listen to what they had to say. And that's a large part of what we can bring to what we do for agencies, is just having someone there ready to listen. But like, Sam, with Uphex, like, because like what I don't see in your community is a lot of like, I don't even think there's a need for it, but like there's no kind of like support, right? Like there's not kind of like a huge team of support people kind of just sitting there nattering around, with tickets and things like that. Or is there? I mean, I don't know. Like I don't see it. But...
Well, we knew. So I guess, yes, we have some support. So we have one-on-one onboarding now that you can get. And we do it the same reason that Shaun was talking about. There's two reasons why people don't do this. Is one, they don't have customers, right? And two, they're not configured properly. The biggest thing for us, and this was even in my agency, and I'll tell you my agency, and then I'll wrap up with Uphex. But when I shifted from the traditional service-based agency model to the software as a solution model, we saw our churn almost quadruple overnight. Not in a bad way. No, we saw our retention. Sorry, return is bad. We saw people staying for longer, almost, and our support requests and all that kind of stuff. And the big thing was we started being proactive, where we were in a fight or flight situation, keying on to, Shaun's story here. When you're in a fight or flight situation, you cannot be very strategic, but when you're a proactive place, you can say, hey, like, for example, Growthable could at the end of a week, hey, we noticed that you added this many people to the top of your funnel. well done, something like that. Imagine if you provided a service like that to the agency customers that used your services, and you just told their customers, hey, this week you had this win, and you did that proactively. Okay. I think the same thing, like in my agency, that's what we do in service. Our service is we try to not be reactive. If somebody is saying, hey, I have this problem, with lack of information, people always make up their own, and it's never to your benefit. Right. And so we try and be proactive on everything. Same thing with Uphex. We have daily classes, and I want people to know about that. Put it in emails like, hey, daily classes, it will help you do this thing. And not, we have 6,000 people in that Facebook group, and not 6,000 people come to those calls. Right. But we also have a chat widget where if they have a simple problem, we do have support that can come in and help them solve those simple issues. And so we have basic support, but we don't require a ton of onboarding support, because you can set up Uphex in 30 minutes and it's like click, click, click. It's not hard to set up. But for me, the big thing that really changed things in my agency, and we're talking about adoption, expansion. There's a gap between onboarding and adoption. And that is I have an expectation, it didn't get met. So now what? Right. And by the way, they make up expectations on their own. They're not always represented by us. But when they're not, then we just need to add additional ingredients, hey, by the way, good job doing this. Hey, by the way, and be proactive. Or, hey, by the way, we noticed that your ad cost was increasing. So we reset the ad set, and you should see those costs increase over the next week. Have a great day. That takes no time at all. Right. And then the person's like, oh, so I'm paying for something. Oh, I'm getting something. And I call it software as a solution in the agency model, because I think we're transitioning away from a service, but we're not quite in the lead gen space, in my space, to a set it and forget it. I think there's still people.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think such a thing exists, by the way. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes people make about software. They think that somehow there is a set it, forget it model. That doesn't exist. So I mean, I will say, I anticipate, we're a product-led company. I am an engineer, and I believe in the power of engineers to change the world. I still think we will have a larger customer success and customer service force, and we actually may be there now, than we will an engineering force. Even though I say yes to every engineering request I get. In fact, I try to overhire in engineering. I hire more product managers than we probably need. Like, I put every last dollar back into engineering, and I still think that customer success and customer service is superior. Because the thing I always tell everybody is, listen, let's say tomorrow you invent a time machine in your garage. If no one freaking knows about it, it doesn't matter. Yeah. And I think about all the features that we have in our app, and I tell my product managers and I tell my engineers this. I said, look, listen, what you just made kicks butt, but if no one ever uses it, you just wasted your time. So how do we fix that? It's customer success, right? Because it doesn't matter how great the feature is, doesn't matter how simple it is to use, doesn't matter blah, 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 blah. Unless it just does it by itself, which none of them do, unfortunately, or very few, you're going to need somebody to help the customer consume it, and that's customer success. So for me, it's more important than, sadly, maybe not sadly, I don't know, but it's more important than engineering, because it comes first. It's at the top of the funnel of adoption, and it's really thinking about it that from that perspective. And if your goal is to truly get a customer to a successful endpoint, it travels through the land of service like you wouldn't believe, well before you arrive at any kind of tool, which is really what software truly is at the end of the day.
Agreed.
Yeah, that was a question I was getting. I think I asked you maybe a year ago, Shaun, and I was wondering whether or not there was a focus on hiring in that respect.
We have a boatload of people in that department, and it will only get bigger as time goes on. And we measure the ROI, and it is very, very clear. If you get on a Zoom call with any of these people, the likelihood that you convert and are successful and pay us for a long time goes way up.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you find that Zoom call is tactically the difference between like say being like just live chat? I mean, it's a tactical question.
Way different. Radically different. Yeah. The Zoom call wins every time.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that.
There is no, I mean, outside, I mean, if I could, I would put a physical person in everybody's location. Like, the human, and this is what I always tell people, like I say, like, if you're going to start off local. It's the humanizing impact. I cannot, it is like it or not, it is the absolute gravity of the truth. I could be a tenth as good as you at what you do, but if the difference between you and me is I can go walk in and see the customer and you can't, I'm going to blow you out of the water, buddy. Because fundamentally, they want someone that they can touch and feel and get a sense of way more than they want someone who's quote unquote an expert. Because the problem is, from the customer's angle, their capacity to judge our ability to deliver is close to zero. They don't know if I'm an okay plumber and you're the best plumber in town. They have no clue, and they'll never will. There's no way for them to judge it. They don't have that capacity. They literally judge with their eyes, right? And the body language and all of that. And to the extent that you can show that, you just win every time.
Yeah. Last question, if you guys don't mind. I'll just double check that everyone has time for one more question.
Yeah, give me one more question. So I gotta go jump on.
Yeah. So this is for both of you, but you know, Shaun, you guys were just rated 2,500 something, Inc. 5,000 list, right? So that's obviously there's a rate of growth that can be measured there with you guys. Sam,
sure,
it's a little bit more. It's a little bit more. I don't know. Whatever
Sam's
the
growth rate is probably higher than mine, actually, because you know we used to you know, when you have a smaller number that you're starting with, one more counts for more. So don't count.
I want Shaun's customer base right now. I'll have all of those. Yes, he's got a lot more than us.
But so lastly, like, and it sort of taps on what's happening for me personally in my business right now. But like, have you ever grown at a point where sort of like, you know, again, like I like to listen to VC podcasts or whatever, like, you know, they talk about like escape velocity, right? Where it's kind of self-sustaining. It's just happening without you kind of really doing anything. You get a certain point. Did you have to pull back on growth because this customer success function, the ability to handle the volume wasn't there? And we've got all sides of the spectrum, right? Me being completely bootstrapped. Sam, you already had a successful agency. And then Shaun, I'm assuming there was resources. We certainly know about funding and things that were available. But, you know, it could be yes or no. If you want to expand on it, it'd be awesome to hear.
So did we ever have to pull back on
growth because expansion? You couldn't fulfill or do the success?
Did we ever have to? I think the way you should.
Did you ever want different
ways to phrase that? I mean, no, never. Are there times we should have? Absolutely, but we didn't.
Yeah.
Instead, we just hit the brick wall and kept on going. So, I mean, are there times when our customer service was terrible because we'd underhired? Absolutely. But under no circumstance was I going to slow anything down. Instead, I mean, I think the way I always look at it is, you know, when you're inside a company, and particularly as you start to hire people, you know, everyone starts making decisions that are good for them. And when they make decisions that are good for them, that takes the hardship away from them, really what they're doing is they're transferring it to your customer. So when we got behind, I didn't say, well, you know, I think what we should do is, you know, make it harder on customers by limiting somehow the number that could come on. I looked at my team and I said, hey guys, this is your fault. Like, this is my fault. This is your fault. This is our fault. Like, we should have seen this coming and we should have been better than this. So because we've made this mistake, it's time to double down. It's time to, you know, it's time to work weekends. It's time to do whatever we got to do, pull out all the stops. I want 100 people in here yesterday. How do we make that happen? And trust me, there was a lot of angry people. Well, we have a 4 to 6 week training cycle. We can't train people in 2 weeks. Too bad. Welcome to your new training cycle. And we're probably going to make it a week. I don't care. Like, I'd rather have a person on the phone who is at least there to try to help than no one at all. Right? On and on and on, whatever it was, like pay more than you need to pay, work harder than you want to work, like, et cetera, et cetera. I put the pain back on my team because that's where it belongs, right? These customers are paying us. We're not paying them. So at the end of the day, we need to take on that pain. So I wasn't going to slow down our growth because, again, that would have made it easier for my team. And that's not who I'm here to make it easier for. I'm here to make it easier for my company.
Cool. Sam, you?
We're a little bit different only because a lot of our, I mean, all of our audience basically comes from Shaun's audience. Right. And so I don't have like a prospecting going outside of high level. I like the marriage between the two makes the product that good. But when we did our first spotlight with Chase, we saw an influx of, that's kind of when we opened it up to the public, right, in the high level community. That study went out in the Facebook group, people saw it, and we had, within the period of like 2 weeks or something like that, 120 some people come in to trial. We only 10 of those people, and that was a big, like a wake-up call to us, because we had already been using Uphex in our agency, so we knew it worked. It was like, this thing works. Why are these people, why did only 10 people stick? This is ridiculous. But we looked at it and we started talking to them. We're like, why wasn't this a fit? What was it? And all of them unanimously were saying things like, I'm not sure I know how to set it up. It was effectively, the onboarding process was not as streamlined as it is today. Well, we kept improving. And so when people see that, I mean, we didn't have the funding and the scale that, that we have today or anything like that. So we were bootstrapping it based off the revenue that's coming in from my agency. So it was like, hey, we pay for our developers and all that stuff with that. And so for the next 8 months, we did no advertising. We did basically just focused on that one thing. And then when it had kind of been fixed and we started adding more and more people, I remember for like 6 months, our weekly meeting had our goal customer volume, 25. If we could just get 25, right? And around 20, people started saying, yeah, I onboarded good, no problem, good, or all good, no problem. So that's when I reached back out Chase. And I said, hey, we've got a new thing coming. We released the messenger objective. And I was going to be down in Mexico, which is where Chase lives. I said, hey, why don't I come to your office and we'll do in-person spotlight. And I did that. And that was a completely different relaunch, if you want to say that, because as soon as those people came in, we went from 25 to 200 in a month. Okay. But they stuck. And so then it's like, okay, great. Now we can start pushing ads, doing all the things that you want to do to grow. But our particular product, our particular audience market fit, like the product that we had to create, was really relying on an outcome that we couldn't promote until it was ready. And now today, people on board, our trial to conversion rate is like 44%, something like that. So it's, for us, I think that's good. Shaun, is that good?
Yes, that's rocking. In general, by the way, for the record, what I do or have done, a lot of it is just random happenstance and luck. So don't at all take it as a formulaic approach. I personally make no claims to the fact that I make good decisions at all. I just know how I just know how I got here. Not that it was a good idea.
Doesn't that mean that I think that's actually good. The fact that people do it in different ways doesn't just mean that there's not a way. I think a lot of people get
I agree.
100%. They get
and in fact, I'll tell you one more. I'll raise you one more. I think there's a better way to do it than the way I do it.
Okay.
I just don't know what that is. And so, I just know how I come and that's all I got. So, it's like, you got to use what you got. But I totally respect the fact that somebody else who went on the same rough journey as I've gone on could have done a radically better job. I mean, it's sort of like, I think of this like my, my significant other, if you ever want to go on a trip or accomplish anything in life, you really ought to work with her rather than work with me, because it's like, if you go on a trip with me, you're going to get wherever you're going and you'll have you'll have forgotten half your stuff and you'll have to rebuy everything in a store, and you may or may not have your tickets. I mean, there's lots of things that could go wrong with me, but if you go with her, none of that will ever happen. You'll get there on time. You'll have everything you anticipated. Nothing will go wrong. The perfection level is insane. So, I mean, in that instance, I can tell you it's a way better way to travel. Although knowing that I will never be any differently than I just described. And I don't mind it. It doesn't bother me at all. But the point being is, I think that's the fun of this. The fun of this journey is that no one is walled off from it, right? Regardless of how you come, what your strength is, what your weaknesses are, you still can go on this journey and be quite successful on the other side. It's not a one size fits all deal.
I agree. Love it.
Yeah, and the point that I like to just make there is as well is that there's so much content in the community. Shaun, your own community. Sam, the whole business is based on client acquisition, right? Essentially, but there's so much focus on that. But as we can tell from both of your examples there, is that you can achieve all of that success, but you can still be maybe haven't figured it out in terms of how to actually keep them, how to actually make them happy, right? And there's a process to that, right? Which of course is the whole point of building a customer success team to make that work, right? And so my point there is, you gotta take this as seriously or as the client acquisition stuff, because without it, like you said, Sam, you'd get 110 new leads. You would have been jumping off the rooftops thinking that was amazing, but then converted less than 10%. And it was down to onboarding, et cetera, and had to be improved over time. So, that's me just making the point because of what we do, right? That customer success as a function is a really serious thing and actually does need to exist, and it needs to exist in order to kind of help you succeed in subscription model businesses. And I think a lot of high-level agencies are trying to go there. They're trying to be subscription model businesses. So
I think customer success is more important than customer acquisition.
Right.
And in fact, I actually think customer success supports customer acquisition.
Yes.
Because every business, in my opinion, should be fueling its acquisition through recommendation. That should be the number one way by which people acquire customers. Because we all are guilty of this. We have bought some stupid thing that our friend told us to buy because our friend told us to buy it. And for no other reason except that. And in some cases, we were radically happier because our friend had a great recommendation. In some cases, it was quite the opposite. But regardless, it's that recommendation engine that fundamentally drives, I think, great businesses. And how do you get there? You have great experiences. And how does that happen? You have great customer success. It's not the stupid ad. It's certainly not the, I mean, I'll tell you, I get propositioned to buy a lot of things, and there's some things I actually want to buy. But in that journey, the worst person to ever talk to is a stupid salesperson. Because I just know they're full of it. They don't know anything, and they're going to tell me whatever I want to hear. I try to move past those idiots as fast as possible. I really want to talk to somebody of more substance. And personally, if I could talk to an existing customer, in almost all cases, I'd be radically happier, because at least they would tell me the truth. They tell me the good, they tell me the bad, they would tell me the tricks, they would tell me the pitfalls. I mean, they would accelerate the process of sales. And the fact that you can enable people to do that proactively is insanity. That's a great thing. And that's how every business should be expanding itself. And that is all predicated on great customer success.
Can I say one thing before we end? And I know we just keep going and going. This is my last thing I'm going to say. Back in like 2019, I was running ads in my agency for a doctor, and we use ads that we know work. We put them in one market to the next. We used ads in this for this doctor in Dallas, and we were running ads and we were getting nothing. And all of the metrics made no sense. We're like, what is going on? And we could not figure it out for the life of us. And we did a simple Google search about the location, and all there were horrible, not bad, not just like 1 star, but like a description of what had happened with that doctor and all these bad things. And we went back and we're like, this has nothing to do. It doesn't, what's the phrase? My dad always said, if you shine up a turd, it's still a turd, right? At the end of the day, marketing will not work. No growth mechanism will work if you leave a trail of bodies and that your product doesn't just, if you're a terrible business, that will pay the worst negative growth cycle dividends that you can ever imagine. And this guy, shortly after, went out of business. Shocker. But it had nothing to do with how good our marketing was. So,
yeah. Good point. All right. Well, I appreciate both of your time.
Absolutely.
Plug, Sam. As far as I'm concerned, if you're doing anything PPC wise, I'm trying to forward think here for you, Sam. PPC wise, it's an umbrella term. And you're also a high-level agency. Go and check out uphex.com. I'm assuming anybody watching this is probably already one of your customers, Shaun. So props to you. Go highlevel.com. And of course, if you
and I will say for the record, I'll also throw out that Sam's Facebook group is awesome. I spend a lot of time just looking at that group and getting tons of value, not just from him, but also from just a lot of his customers. So he's created a really standout community of super, super, super smart people.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Thank you, Shaun.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, totally agree with that. And of course, if you are looking at customer success and you're on HighLevel, go to growthable.io if you're interested in learning what we do. So Shaun Clark, HighLevel, thanks so much for having the time and patience to talk to me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for attending. So we'll see you next time. I'm going to put links below in the description and the comments. And if you liked this, please like, subscribe. This is also going out on podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. See you soon.